Well, earlier I spoke to the Republican pollster Frank Luntz and started by asking him why it had taken Joe Biden until today to speak out about the protests.
I don't know why, and this is significant. And I want to bring you back to 1968, because the campus wars in 68 cost the Democrats the White House. The mess in Chicago at the National Convention, the protests at every Democratic stop, prevented them from benefiting from support among young voters, and it had a consequential impact. Right now, I'm not sure anyone remembers that in today's Democratic Party, but this is significant. If Joe Biden doesn't enter the election with a strong showing from first and second time voters, it'll be hard for him to defeat Donald Trump. And so right now, the White House is very, very scared.
But he's between a rock and a hard place, isn't he? If he's on the side of the protesters, then the law and order crowd will say, you know, you're too soft on these people. If he's done what he did today, which is to crack down on the protesters, he's with the police, then of course young people will say, you know, you misunderstand us, we're not going to vote for you.
Exactly. But it's not just about the protests. It is about the Israeli-Hamas battle, what's going on in Gaza. It's not just young people on college campuses that are engaged in this. But in the end, what the public is seeing on their television sets in America is frightening them. And we haven't seen anything like this in more than 40 years.
So which are the swing states that are most vulnerable for Biden on this issue?
Oh, that's a good question. You have to go to university towns, and so probably number one is Wisconsin. North Carolina.
And Michigan, right? Michigan, Arab Americans and students in Michigan as well.
You're correct.
But hang on, these people are not going to vote for Trump, are they? So is the danger here that they either won't vote at all, or they might vote for, you know, Cornel West or one of the other splinter candidates?
And this is one of the reasons why Robert Kennedy Jr. is benefiting from this. The more unstable the political environment, the more unstable what's happening at college campuses, the better a third-party candidate does.
So how important is it that Joe Biden gets this whole issue of the Gaza war behind him well before the November elections? Because at the moment, it just seems to be open-ended.
There are some things that a president can do to influence history. They can be involved in the economy. They can tinker at the edges. When it comes to foreign policy, sometimes things happen that just undermine them. Jimmy Carter is the best example in 1980. Carter was going into the election with a lead, but because of what happened in Iran, he was shown to be weak, shown to be ineffective, and in the end, it probably cost him the election. And Joe Biden's looking at that as well. The historic precedents for these situations are really dangerous for the Democrats because they suggest having real trouble in November.
What is the more problematic issue here? The court cases for Donald Trump or the situation in Gaza for Joe Biden?
In the end, that's a great question. And the only way to answer it is by the impact at the end. At this point, people care more about what's happening in college campuses and what's happening in Gaza. But if Donald Trump's trial ends badly for him, he's going to be the one who gets hurt the most. And yet all this instability, all these insurrections that are happening across the country, that's not good news for Joe Biden. It's another reason why Americans are in such a funk, why they're so pessimistic about the future, and frankly, why they're so angry with each other.
And just finally and briefly, looking at the most recent polls, and I know that we're months away from the election, but consistently, these polls by a slither do not look good for the president, do they?
That is correct. But I don't look at the national numbers. And if I can leave your viewers with one thing to remember, the national polling numbers don't matter. It's only these 7 states. And Donald Trump at this moment has a 3% lead in those 7 states. That suggests that he has a lead in the election.
Frank Luntz, always a pleasure.
Thank you. Me too.